Bibles and open up to the first book of the Bible, Genesis. Just reminds me of Bernie and a Genesis beginning. Hey, I'll share something with you. You know, everybody got those coasters on their seats. Those really are neat to be able to pass out to neighbors. I was able to pass one out, and I really didn't say much, and I didn't have to say much. And I just said, hey, have you ever felt like you needed to start over again? And I'm telling you, so many people do feel that. And I just handed him the picture and said, this is a picture from a study in Genesis that we're doing. I said, look at that sunset, how beautiful it is. But have you ever felt like you just needed to start over? And the conversation just opened wide up. So I just want to challenge everybody. You know, a couple weeks ago, maybe it was last week, 1 or 2 weeks ago, we gave a challenge in this church, remember? For everybody to lead at least one person to Jesus Christ this year. So I want to challenge you further by taking those coasters and begin to ask God how you can use it with your neighbors or your friends. I think one of the things that's so easy to use about that is the picture on there, because it's such an incredible, beautiful sunset. And I think it gives people a picture of how God can make them beautiful again with a new beginning. So what could be better than that? So take that challenge. Genesis 27. Today we're going to be looking at how deception can cripple a dysfunctional family. You know, one of the things that I really enjoyed doing, teaching through Genesis, is teaching on these messed up dysfunctional families of these famous people like Abraham and Jacob and Isaac and all the boys, because sometimes, you know, we put those people up on a pedestal, but, you know, they have failures just like we do, and it makes the Bible come alive. So as we go back to the context this morning, I want to think about the discontent and fighting between Jacob and Esau that really, if you remember, started when they were in their mother's womb. At first, she thought it was just a baby kicking and moving of a child in the mother. But then, you know, there was one going on each side. She realized she had twins. And then she said, I think they're fighting. They were fighting before they ever came out. And the day they were born, we know that Esau came out first, but Jacob had a hold of his heel, almost as if saying, wait a minute, you're not getting out of here without me. I'm coming too. And we know as the boys grew up that Jacob ended up being a rancher and a homebody, and he was concerned about the things of the Lord, and he became his mother's favorite. Esau became a skilled hunter, a real man's man, and Isaac loved him because of his hunting skills, and he developed a taste for wild game. So there was already a history between the boys as adults where their personalities had clashed. Wasn't many years back when Esau came in from hunting and Jacob was making some lentil stew, and you guys remember the story. He sold his birthright for a bowl of stew because Esau, he didn't care about the family line or about the future Messiah. Esau, he just cared about Esau. Now, the birthright had to do with both position in the family and inheritance. And since he was the firstborn, he was entrusted with the leadership of the family, and he was also given what they call judicial authority from the father. And last of all, he was given a double portion of the inheritance. So that's what he gave up. Now, maybe Esau was willing to throw all that away, knowing that someday he could go back and still receive his father's blessing as the firstborn before he died. So the final blessing of the Father to the Son was formally acknowledging the firstborn as the principal heir. So as we open our story this morning, there's been a lot of water underneath the bridge with the boys, but also with mom and dad. There had been favoritism going on with both parents, Rebekah with Jacob, and Isaac with Esau. And don't know why, but over the years, Isaac just seemed to lose the sense of his calling. He really didn't care anymore about what God said when those two boys were born, that he wanted Jacob to be the one who was the inheritor, the secondborn, not Esau, the firstborn. And there had been so much deception in the past with this family that they were at the point where basically none of them trusted each other. And, one might be surprised if you didn't dig a little bit into the history of this episode that we're reading this morning. For example, Isaac is already 130 years old, and Jacob and Esau are 60. Now, I know I posted a picture on Facebook this week of Jacob there with Isaac deceiving him, being Esau. And whoever painted the picture really didn't do their homework, because they had Jacob about 16 years old. Well, he was 60, not 16. So, this isn't like today where people might be retiring in 5 years when they're 60 years old. People at that time were still living well into their hundreds. So there was still a case to be made that these men were still very capable of physical activity and were sharp enough to deliver a lot of intrigue and deception. So this family was plagued with mistrust, and it became an excuse to take advantage of each other. So the question we want to ask this morning is, how does deception and heartache bring chaos into the family? The first thing that we're going to see is by self-deception. Verse 1, it says, "Now it came about when Isaac was old, and his eyes were too dim to see, that he called his older son Esau." Now, the dimming of Isaac's eyes were him probably experiencing cataracts, which is the natural clouding of your lens. And the way that works is you go blind slowly. It just gets milky and blurry until finally you can't see anymore. We don't have to worry about that today because it's a same-day surgery. You're in and out and you're back. But at that time, there was no surgery for cataracts, and basically you just slowly went blind. So Isaac is definitely handicapped. So he calls his son over. Verse 1 goes on, and he said, "My son?" And he said to him, "Here I am." And Isaac said, "Behold now, I'm old, and I don't know the day of my death. Now then, please take your gear, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare a savory dish for me, such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, so that my soul may bless you before I die." So Isaac is old enough that he can't get around anymore. He can't see. He probably has a hard time hearing, but his main handicap isn't physical. His main handicap is spiritual, because he's compromised so long concerning God's will on who the heir is going to be. He's ready to give it to the son that he could relate to most as a hunter, rather than what God told him to do. And in Isaac's old age, he just learned to live through Esau vicariously. Esau was a great hunter, and he couldn't get out of the house and do it anymore, but he loved Esau going going out there on the big hunt and bringing the game home and having a huge feast together. You know, there was a bond there of being just men together. But Isaac was self-deceived because he'd compromised so long, not making Jacob the heir. He got to the point where he just flat out didn't care anymore. And remember, this didn't happen overnight. It was a 60-year process. Jacob and Esau are 60 years old now. And as far as Esau was concerned, he never did care about the things of God and had lived an entire life of self-deception, never even wanting to be part of God's plan. So how does deception bring heartache and chaos into the family? First of all, we're seeing by self-deception. And second of all, we're going to see by conniving deception. Verse 5 says, Rebekah was listening while Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for the game to bring home, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, Behold, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau, saying, Bring me some game and prepare a savory dish for me that I may eat, excuse me, and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death or before I die. It looks like Jacob may have received his ability to be a conniver from his mom. Now, don't get me wrong. Jacob had already arrived at being a good deceiver. It wasn't that many years ago that he got his brother to give away his birthright over a bowl of lentils. But here's the problem with Rebekah. Instead of going to God and praying about the situation and seeing what God wanted to do, she feels it's her responsibility to intervene. She doesn't even stop to think about it. She immediately goes into the intervention mode. And Jacob is going to be the main actor of her plan. Remember, Jacob is close to his mom, and she has a heavy influence over him. Now, he's never married yet, and he's 60 years old. Maybe that was because his mom didn't want anybody else, butting in his life and butting in the relationship that he had with her. It's amazing the influence that mothers can have over a family. We like to call them the matriarch at that point. But I know that there are gangbangers in MS-13 and other gangs that are radical, ruthless murderers, but they are afraid of their mother. I'm dead serious. I'm talking about a 50-year-old man all tatted up all over his head and all over his body, been in prison for 40 years, and when his mom says the word, he's yes, ma'am. What is it? She's a little bitty woman, and what's going on here? What are they afraid of? I don't know. It just is. Moms, you have no idea the power that you wield. In this case, Rebekah is a setup person for this sting operation with Isaac. Verse 8 says, okay, listen, now therefore my son, listen to me. Don't listen to me, please. Listen to me as I command you. You get what mom is doing here. To this 60-year-old man, go now to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats from there, that I may prepare them as a savory dish for your father, such as he loves. Rebekah knows that, look, if you want to get to somebody, you get to him through their stomach. Mom knows that. And in this case, we know it's true because Isaac's all ready to sell out the blessing to somebody who shouldn't because he wants a good meal out of it. So she knows how to do it. So once Jacob has the fresh meat from the goats, Rebekah explains the sting operation. Verse 10, then you shall bring to your father that he may eat, so that he may bless you before his death. So the sting here is Jacob is supposed to pretend to be Esau. And, it's all fine and dandy for the person setting up the sting operation. Don't worry, son, this is what you need to do. You're just going to go in there and do this and that. But when you're the one who's supposed to do it, you begin to think about some of the problems in the setup of the sting. And in this case, Jacob is the main actor. Verse 11, Jacob answers his mother, Rebekah, "Behold, Esau, my brother, he's a hairy man, and I'm a smooth man. I got no hair. This guy is like Harry, the hairy ape man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and then I'll be like a deceiver in his sight, and I'll bring upon myself a curse instead of a blessing. What about that, Mom?" So when you're the one drafted to do the dirty work, you begin to think through how things could go south. And it was obvious to Jacob, his mother hadn't thought through everything. Now, that's the problem with lying and deceiving. Once you begin the process, there's always problems with the plan because you can't think of everything. There are so many murderers out there that have been caught because they didn't think through everything. There's always a loose knot in the plan somewhere, and it always takes more lying and more deceiving to take care of it. But you know what? Rebekah doesn't care. She's committed to the plan. She's going to do an intervention, period. No matter how many times she has to change it. So verse 13, his mother said to him, "Your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go get him for me." Wow, it's really easy for Rebekah to say, "Hey, just go do it. Curse be on me," but it wouldn't be on her. No, it was going to fall on Jacob. So at this point, Rebekah is deceiving Isaac through Jacob. She's deceiving Jacob into believing that she's going to take the fall for him, which is impossible to do. And worst of all, she's not paying attention to the signs that God is sending her not to go through with the plan. Have you ever done that before? Have you ever had that happen? You have put together a major intervention of some sort. You are going to take care of a catastrophic problem that's going on with your family or friends or going on at work, and you know the way you're doing it, deep down in your conscience is not right. You're manipulating things, but you've made so many excuses that you just continue on anyway because you're just focused on the problem, not God. And what happens when we do that is God sends us signs in the middle of all our manipulation. Don't do this. Don't do that. I have a pastor that I love watching on TV. His name is Robert Morris. He's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And he was sharing an illustration of something like this that happened in his life. It was towards the beginning of their ministry, and I think they had 4 kids, and they were quite poor, but they needed a new car. There was just too many of them to get around in this small car, so he wanted to get an SUV, something big that could, carry everybody around. But, he really wasn't thinking through it that much. And his wife was saying, are you sure we need an SUV? He goes, well, yeah, we got 4 kids. How long are we going to do this, piling people on top of each other? We need to do it, and we need to do it now. It's like, get out of the way. And she's going, I'm just saying, I'm feeling like God is just saying, hold on. Let's just hold on and pray and ask God to direct us. And he goes, he already directed me, and I'm the man, and you need to follow me. Women, have you ever heard that before? Oh my gosh, I'm thinking maybe so. So he went out and bought that bad old SUV. It was huge. It was old. It was like 12, 15 years old. Had a lot of mileage on it. And the amazing thing was, he hadn't had it 2 weeks, and the transmission went out. And of course, he bought it off a private owner, so you can't go back. And then, he took a little closer look, and the tires were bad. And so, the tranny was going to cost about $6,000. There's nothing he could do. So he was just about ready to spend $6,000 more on a transmission, and somebody gave them a minivan with low mileage on it. Just some wealthy person in the church got a new Cadillac or whatever and had this nice van. It was really fairly new. And so he ended up selling that SUV for less than half of what he bought it for 3 weeks earlier. So sometimes when we are in a problem-solving mode and we don't have our eyes on God, we can certainly get in trouble. The problem is when we're committed to taking care of the problem ourselves, we almost never listen to God. So Rebekah's not heeding the warning signs. Instead, she doubles down and demands that Jacob go get the materials for the staying. Verse 14 says, so he went and got him and brought him to his mom. It's a 60-year-old man. Can you imagine how this is working out? And his mother made savory food such as his father loved. And at this point, we have a frantic mother that has become a control freak in the setup here, because we already know that Jacob was a good cook. He was cooking those lentils. He just liked cooking. But Rebekah isn't taking any chances in making what is in her mind the perfect roasted venison, although it is going to be goat. Then Rebekah, verse 15, took the best garments of Esau, her elder son. Now, when it says the best garments, I don't want you to think that she came out with a suit and a tie. No, best garments mean funky hunting clothes. Those are the best garments for the situation, see? Because she even wants the clothes to smell like game. So that's why it's the best. So this is amazing. Jacob's 60 years old, but his mom is dressing him. Next, she puts on his disguise. I'm not sure, but I think Jacob must have felt like he was half goat man or something. And she put the skins of the young goats on his hands. How did she do that, you guys? They just butchered the goats. So the skin had to be pliable. It was fresh. I pray they wiped it off, And, I guess she just sewed it around his hands and his arms. It says she took the skins of the young goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Just imagine Mom putting a goat thing around my neck, getting ready to go into the sting operation. And she also gave the savory food and the bread, what she had made, to her son Jacob. So the sting operation is completely set up. A man dressed like a goat. What could go wrong? So how does deception bring heartache and chaos into the family? First, as we saw by Isaac and Esau, there's self-deception going on. Second, by conniving deception, like Jacob and Rebekah were into. And third, we're going to see by lying. Look at verse 18. It says, then he came to his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. Why did he say this? He says, who are you, my son? I think that probably worried Jacob immediately. You weren't supposed to ask that. You're supposed to say, oh, hi, yeah, everything's good. And Jacob said to his father, I'm Esau, your firstborn. And I've done as you told me. Get up, please, sit and eat of my game that you may bless me. I think that Jacob's heart was probably racing in this first set of lies. In a sense, he has to lie and tell him as Esau. That's a given. But then, to be more convincing, he repeats what Isaac said to Esau about going to getting the game and hoping surely after that statement, there's going to be no more questions. Have you ever done that before? You lied to somebody. And maybe they were asking you a question. And of all things, when you're lying, you're praying. Is that crazy or what? Oh Lord, please don't let him ask me one more question. Well, you're out of fellowship, you're in sin, you're lying, and you're praying about more lying. Well, you know what? That doesn't work. Wow. So he was just hoping for the best, hoping that there would be no more questions. But, once you start down the path of lying, there's really no return. The only thing there is getting deeper and deeper. But once you start down that path, there's really no return. And Isaac seems a little uneasy with the situation. Verse 20, Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have it so quickly, my son? How'd you get back from that hunt so quick? What's going on here? Hunting a deer down, you guys, could take a good day or two. You just don't go out and shoot a deer. You got to be a detective. You have to be familiar with the mountains and the whole area. And you got to be out there at the right time. You got to be downwind. You got to have all this stuff going on for you." So even Isaac knew something was up. So going deeper into deception, Jacob tries to be even more convincing. So he includes God in it. And he said, "Why did it happen so quick? Because the Lord your God caused it to happen to me." Oh man, this guy's burying himself. Now, this is just covering one mistake after the other. Each time Jacob lies, he's hoping he's stopped the questions from Isaac. But no matter how hard Jacob tries, the questions keep coming. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come close." Can you imagine? You put yourself in Jacob's shoes right now. He's going, "Oh my gosh, are you kidding me, man? Okay. I wonder if he really thinks this goat skin is going to feel like Esau's hairy neck." You know what, you guys? Goat skin doesn't feel like hairy people, does it? Wow. I think he's concerned. So his dad says, "Please come close." And he's thinking, well, what if he figures out I have these stupid goat skins on? And why did I let my mom dress me up like this? Good grief, I'm 60 years old. Wow. Verse 22 says, "So Jacob came close to Isaac his father, and he felt him and said," you guys, this is getting worse every word we go. The voice is the voice of Jacob. Busted. But the hands are the hands of Esau. Wow. I think that Jacob is speechless. I don't think he knows what to say. I think his heart is doing about 180 miles an hour because it's all about ready to unfold. And at this point, Jacob must have thought, one more question and I'm busted. And I'm going to get cursed instead of a blessing. But verse 23 says, he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. And he said, "Are you really Esau? Can you believe this?" It's like, you guys, this is how Satan works. Just when you think the questions have stopped and you've gotten away with all your lies, Satan brings one more question from that person and says, "Are you sure you're Esau?" He's going to make him lie one more time to close the deal. Verse 24 goes on and he said, I am. So he said, bring it to me. Bring me the food, and I'll eat of my son's game that I may bless you. And he brought it to him, and he ate. And he also brought him wine, and he drank. I'm sure Jacob was thinking, look, if I get dead, first of all, Dad's 130. He's blind. He can't hear very well. He probably can't feel very well because he thought a goat was his son. But, once we get some wine down him, then we're really going to finish any problem that might continue on. But I'm sure that Jacob must have thought, this is the longest meal that I've ever watched anybody eat in my entire life. I'm thinking in Jacob's mind, that meal, it may have lasted 10 or 15 minutes. It seemed like 2 hours. Like, oh, you want another piece of meat? Are you full yet, Dad? Let's get on to the blessing here. So, why? Because knowing any minute, Esau could come strolling through the door. But verse 26 says, then his father Isaac said to him, please come close to me and kiss me, my son. So he came close and kissed him. And when he smelled the smell of the garments, he blessed him and said, see, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field which the Lord has blessed. I guess Rebecca really knew what she was doing when she picked out the good clothes. They were good and smelling. Verse 26 and 27 are really a sad example of what happens when we lose our spiritual compass and we start living life in the flesh. Isaac was given specific instructions when those two boys were born that Jacob was the one who was to receive the blessing. And not Esau. To him, to Isaac, it didn't matter anymore about the plan of the coming Messiah. It just came down to Isaac playing favorites with Esau and just satisfying some simple desires. How sad. But he finally gives in, and he blesses Jacob in his disguise. He says, now, may God give you the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and an abundance of grain and new wine. This was the same exact blessing that Abraham gave Isaac, including the blessing of the earth. But now, Isaac actually goes against God's command when the boys were born, at least in his mind. And he says, may people serve you and nations bow down to you. And, we know, we don't know all the reasons why God did not want Esau to be the heir here. But maybe it's just God knew that he was going to be a guy who wasn't interested in the things of God. And maybe with all that power that was going to be bequeathed him, he would have ended up being a tyrant. But most of all, God wanted Jacob to be the heir. He says, be master of your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. This is in direct conflict with what God had told Isaac. He told him that the older brother, Esau, would serve the younger. And he goes on and he says, cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you. In the end, we know that Isaac did give the blessing to Jacob, even though he was deceived into doing it. And it's interesting because this is not the only place in Scripture where someone was put into a position of reluctantly giving a blessing when they didn't want to. Years later, we know that the prophet Balaam was forced to bless Israel against his will. And you can go to the New Testament. In the book of John, we know that the high priest, when they were trying to put Jesus to death, spoke prophetically about Jesus in the future to come, even though he helped condemn Jesus to death. Let me just read you the passage. It's out of John 11. It says, but one of them, Caiaphas, the Sanhedrin was having a meeting of how they could get rid of Jesus. But Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all." He told the whole Sanhedrin that. "Nor do you take into account that it is expedient for you that one man die for the people, and that the whole nation not perish." Now he did not say this on his own initiative, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but in order that he might also gather together into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. I always wondered about that passage. You never know what God's going to do. Here he has a non-Christian who helped kill Jesus prophesy. Why? Because that's what God wanted to do. And what are you going to say to that? So, how does deception bring heartache and chaos to the family? First of all, we've seen by self-deception. Second of all, by conniving deception. Third, by flat-out lying. But fourth, and finally, Isaac sees the light and Esau has a meltdown. It seems like, God kept Esau out on that hunt for the perfect amount of timing. Verse 30 says, "Now it came about as soon as Isaac finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had hardly gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from the hunting. Then he also made savory food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, 'Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me.' And Isaac his father said to him, 'Who are you?'" Oh, I don't think that's what Esau wanted to hear. He must have thought, my dad must be having a senior moment. How could he forget this? I just walked out the door 4 hours ago. It was the quickest hunt I've ever had in my entire life. I'm back here, and he forgot already. And he said, "I'm your firstborn son Esau." And then Isaac trembled violently. I think almost as if he was having a little epileptic fit. Just, what just happened? Trembled violently. And he said, "Well, who was he then that hunted game and brought it to me, so that I ate all of it before you came? And blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." Whoa. Isaac may have been 130 years old, but this incident put him into a frenzy, because all of a sudden he realized he had been incredibly deceived by his son. He realized that his wife had set him up, and he realizes that he'd been set up by people that he loves, and his blood pressure probably hit the roof. But in the middle of this crisis, in the middle of this little epileptic fit, he realized that what he was doing was wrong. This is incredible. How could it happen at this moment after 60 years of just drifting away from God? I think it took this moment and this crisis to bring him back. Isaac was in shock, but I believe that God has given him power in these last hours of his life to do the right thing and just make it happen. Even though God has allowed his family to deceive him, he's going to do the right thing. Isaac was in shock, but I believe that God gave him the power to get through it. And the last statement nails down his intention. Yes, and Jacob shall be blessed. He's not turning around. That's what's going on here. And what a scene is going down. Esau is in just as much shock as Isaac. Look at verse 34. It says, when Esau heard the words of his father, it says, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me, even me also, oh my father. It must have been strange to see a grown man who was a manly man, a great hunter, screaming like a woman, crying like a baby, and pleading like a convict who has just received his sentence. But what does Isaac do? He just blames it on Jacob. Verse 35, he goes, your brother came deceitfully and has taken away your blessing. Then he said, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he's taken away my blessing. You know how dysfunctional people work in a dysfunctional family. What they're doing wrong, they blame on you. Has anybody ever seen that before? What somebody does wrong, they blame on you. That's what's going on here with Esau. Because we know that Jacob didn't steal it. Esau happily gave it away for that bowl of lentils. So he gave it away willingly. And it goes on and he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? Esau wants to change the rules here because of the deception that was involved. But Isaac sees now that God has allowed this whole thing to happen so that he can back off and make the right decision. Watch verse 37. Isaac replied to Esau, behold, I've made him your master, and all his relatives I have given to him as servants, and with grain and new wine I have sustained him. Now as for you then, what can I do, my son? And Esau said to his father, do you have only one blessing? See, he's still trying to change the rules. He's not done yet. Bless me, even me also, oh my father. So Esau lifted up his voice and wept. But this is amazing because now, and this is a big family scene. You can't really appreciate a family scene until you get the whole family together for one big knockdown, drag-out argument, and a 60-year-old man, manly man, ends up crying like a baby. Dude, that is a scene. But all the tears in the world were not going to change Isaac's mind. I don't know what happened to Isaac. Somehow this crisis, woke him up. And he just realized, oh no, I was ready to ruin everything. And now I realize all these things came about to wake me up. I was asleep at the wheel, and there is no way I'm changing my mind now. I don't want to die 3 days from now and be answering to God the Father, who did I tell you to make this happen with? So then Isaac, his father, verse 39, answered him and said to him, behold, away from the fertility of the earth shall be your dwelling, and away from the dew of heaven from above. By your sword you shall live, and your brother you shall serve. But it shall come about when you become restless that you will break his yoke from your neck. Esau's descendants are going to be living in a desert area. Today it's known as Jordan. And as far as fertile valleys are concerned, it's not. It's a desert place that's hard to live in. It's definitely a place where you would struggle if you were a farmer. It says that he will be subservient to Jacob. I really don't think Esau liked that. We know that the Edomites, Esau's family line, would also be in conflict with Israel as the years rolled by. So, as we close this morning, we've seen some really important things about family life and how deception destroys it. Even though Isaac was planning on blessing the wrong son, Rebekah and Jacob did not have to help God with all the deception. That just added to the drama, as we saw. Do you know that God was perfectly capable of intervening in the situation? Lies and deception in our families can cause long-term damage and bitterness. Speaking the truth in love is always more effective than deception. So how does deception bring heartache and chaos into family life? As we've seen, by self-deception, by conniving deception, by lying. But finally, something can be done about it. Isaac saw the light. Even after drifting away from God for 60 years, working life out in the flesh, in the end, Isaac is given one more chance to do the right thing. And by God's grace, he takes that chance and makes the right decision. Let's pray.